In this video, we're going to walk through creating and maintaining Hypervisor, Linux, Unix, and Windows discovery jobs within Device42. This discovery option can be found under the Discovery menu, and it's titled Hypervisors, Linux, and Windows. This will bring you to any of your current jobs that are set up to target hypervisors, any of your Linux and Unix infrastructure, as well as your Windows devices. You'll see the current targets, remote collectors that the jobs are ran on, as well as run schedules. Creating a job is as easy as hitting the Add Job button. From here, we could pick the platform that we're running Discovery on, and we could define a job name. We also recommend running these jobs on remote collectors, especially if you're doing application sampling intervals, as they're required for that. Choosing the remote collector from the drop-down allows you to see any of the active remote collectors, and you could choose which one to run it on. The debug level will leave off by default, but if there's any troubleshooting, it's helpful to turn it on. Here we'll define the discovery targets. These could be CIDR blocks. They could be CIDR blocks on different subnets that are entered on different lines, and as long as it's accessible, we will discover across multiple subnets. You could define a port if you're using, in this case, a non-standard SSH port. And if you have older infrastructure where SSH may not be installed, Telnet is also an option for things like your older Solaris equipment. In the username and passwords option, we'll select a service account that's been defined within Device42, and those credentials will then be used in the discovery process. You can also integrate with Microsoft Laps or CyberArk for those credentials. If you would like deep database discovery, you can also provide the username and password for a database user that has access to any Oracle database or Microsoft SQL databases that may be discovered, and enhanced information about them will come in. The application sampling interval will be defined as well, and this is what will tell Device42 to go out on a periodic basis and pull those discovered devices for communications going to or from them to enhance our service topology diagrams. The resource utilization option should be checked to allow trending utilization statistics to be captured in Device42 for CPU, memory, disk output, input-output, and network input-output. You could also define a sampling interval for these. The discovery schedule should be set. Typically, once a day is sufficient for full inventorying of your infrastructure. However, you can define multiple schedules if you would like it to run more frequently than once a day. This is the full schedule, so this will run out and discover any new devices within Device42 in these ranges. And the intervals for application sampling or resource utilization will go out on those intervals and capture the individual statistics for known CIs at that time. Below, you'll see several advanced options that are worth taking some time to look at. You can exclude servers by IP address from this list, and also service port IPs. So if there are particular ports that you would like the communications to be ignored on, you can specify that information here as well. That's helpful if there's an infrastructure service that is not relevant to your use case, and not having that noise will allow cleaner diagrams. For naming options, you can strip the domain suffix for the devices if you would like to remove the domains. And if you're targeting devices by FQDN, you can override the naming conventions in Device42 and have it name the device based on the target given in the auto discovery field. You could also choose to overwrite the existing device name with the discovered name if the CI that exists in Device42 has an alternative name. The device naming format by default will name your devices with the device name .domain name. You can choose to just make it the short host name or the hostname .domain, and whether or not to add the alternative name as an alias within Device42. If there are additional domains or device names that are found, you can add those as non-authoritative aliases as well. This will prevent accidental device matching. On the host discovery for your hypervisors, you could choose to ignore the host operating system name or host serial numbers and UUIDs. This is helpful if there are VMs that may have duplicate serial numbers or UUIDs, and you would like to avoid potentially accidentally matching those devices by those data elements. You can also choose to ignore IPv6 in discovery or subnets or the virtual subtype if that information is not relevant. By default, we will discover any parts on your physical infrastructure and create those parts in device 42, and you could optionally choose to discover host files too. Those will be added as application components. If you're discovering cloud infrastructure, we can query AWS's API during discovery to try to get the cloud ID, and that option is set by default. For virtual machines that are not found in discovery, you can tell device 42 whether we should remove the host association or change the service level or delete the virtual machine. And if you are changing the service level for VMs that are not found, you can specify the service level. You could also define the object category for discovered devices and whether or not to overwrite existing categories. When you're discovering hypervisors, you can choose whether or not to import the virtual machines, or if you want, you could just discover the hosts, and whether or not you want to change the service level based on the virtual machine's power state, and whether or not you would like to get the guest operating system from the hypervisor API, as well as the guest UUIDs. In the software and applications options for your Linux and Unix discoveries, you can choose whether you would like to discover installed software and what software type value should be set for anything that's discovered at that time. You can also choose whether or not to discover services and applications, and certain options for those, such as application component configuration files, or software configuration files, or file system information. For any services, we could also pull in discovered tasks if you would like to see Windows scheduled tasks and any cron entries, and also UDP ports if you would like those captured too. In the miscellaneous options, you can choose whether or not to set or to propagate device permissions if you're using multi-tenancy. And if sudo fails, you can specify whether or not to retry it. By default, we will not retry it to prevent accidental lockouts. If you are using an alternate sudo command, such as pbrun, you can specify that command name. And if you use an alternative sudo password rather than the account password, you can specify that from device 42's secret vault as well. You do have the option to specify whether or not commands can be ran as sudo, and whether or not device 42 will try to sue as another user. The sudo commands are used to capture full information in your Linux and Unix discovery. It is important to be able to run those, so we do recommend keeping that option set. And the su command is used to change users to check certain application component information, such as Oracle database details. You can also specify service levels, customers, and VRF groups, and tags for any discovered devices here. And finally, if you would like to capture the last logged in users during discovery, that is an option as well. And then device 42 will report the last users that have logged in once those devices are discovered.